Well, are we alone in the universe? Well, the answer, of course, is no, we are not. That ship has sailed, has been confirmed by countless scientists, whistleblowers, members of the military, eyewitnesses, NASA itself, quite honestly, and on and on and on. And we've interviewed many members of the secret space program here on our show, high-ranking members of the U.S. military, as well as E4 level of the military who have been to the moon base, who have been to the arcs underneath the oceans. So it's now part of the congressional record that we are not alone. And also we have alien bodies in our possession and alien craft in our possession. That is also part of the congressional record. Everybody with a brain knows this unless you're being willfully ignorant about it. NASA videos even show UFOs approaching, and you can hear Houston discussing it on video. Watch this.
Guys getting the image?
Copy that.
797 here, Houston, how do you rate?
Lots clear. 7, go ahead.
I'll tell you at 10 o'clock high.
This is Houston. Say again, 7.
We have a bogey at 10 o'clock high.
We have an unidentified flying object.
All the dive and appears to be tumbling. It just seems to be tagging along with us. We got somebody out the front window with a pair of binoculars and a zoom lens. We're trying to get a pretty good idea on this thing.
And we copy that.
So, of course, we're not alone. But now the real question is, what kind of advanced technology does our government have in its possession from these alien craft? What have we been able to reverse engineer? How are we currently using it? How do we currently understand the laws of physics? Have the laws of physics been turned on their head? You know, understanding anti-gravity propulsion, quantum mechanics, all of that. And when will we all get to see it? When will us little people get to see it? Will I still have to drive 4 hours in my diesel-powered car, or can I use some of this advanced propulsion technology that our government has? Well, we thought we'd bring in Dr. Wai-Ping Yu today for a deep dive discussion. Dr. Yu is a physicist. He's also a NASA Crew spacecraft subsystem manager, and he's literally at Kennedy Space Center as we speak in Florida. He's also the co-host of a Neighbor's Choice podcast, and he joins us now from Kennedy Space Center. Dr. Yu, great to have you here on the show.
Thank you, Clayton, for having me. It's my honor to be here with your audience.
Well, thank you so much. You're here at an interesting moment because 3I Atlas is approaching Earth, and on December 19th hit its closest point to Earth. And there's a lot I want to unpack with this because I don't know where you guys come down on the NASA side of things. I've spoken to members of the secret space program and others who have told me that 3I Atlas may look like a comet, but this thing has been here before, hundreds of thousands of years ago, that this has been here and also is related to the structures on Mars. So what is sort of like the official maybe NASA position on this? And do they kind of put a tape over your mouth, Dr. Yu? Hey, you're not allowed to talk about this. Or are you allowed to talk about it? Tell me what you think.
Actually, I do allow to talk about it. I do not believe NASA's official position, from the public announcement. So NASA do not believe that's that's alien vehicle or alien spacecraft. So that's something which I personally do believe. I do not believe biological human being, even though it's from alien craft. That biological human being cannot survive on this kind of long-term intergalactic trip. So,
okay,
I hope that makes sense to you, right?
Right. So you don't believe that there's human beings on board or that there's biologics on board in the way that we maybe know about it sort of publicly?
It could be, if I'm not see this particular case, but in general, I do believe we have aliens. If Earth can have can have human beings, biological human beings, and I believe, of course, it could happen in many places at the right place, at the right condition, similar to solar condition. We should have aliens, but whether alien can be traveling themselves, or if they are more advanced than Earth, people on Earth, so they may, I believe, it could have a robotic beings,
So some sort of a robotic being on board, or maybe there's even some sort of inner chamber atmospherically that would protect them in some capacity. Again, I've spoken to insiders who said that this is not the first time that this craft, 3I Atlas, has been near Earth, that hundreds of thousands of years ago it was here, connected in many ways to the structures on Mars. So what do you find so odd? Is there anything that stands out to you from a NASA perspective or just from a physics perspective that is very strange about 3I Atlas?
Of course, the shape is not a normal spherical shape, right? So could make people, because normally we see all spherical shape. That's the most stable structure in the universe, spherical. It's a spherical. That means a charge or magnetic balanced shape. So that's one. About this, you mentioned about hundreds of thousands of years. I would think this actually is not a surprise. This is similar to comics, or asteroids. They do have a periodically, a motion, around the solar system. We see so many, but instead of a spherical object, so this is maybe oval, yeah.
What about the way that it's traveled? Is there anything about its pattern that has been interesting to you?
One of the pattern is because it has a comic-like of a feature, right? So that's why sometimes, hey, is that a new comic? One thing about a comic is different than a regular spherical object. Comic feature, it can create, especially go through, instead of a spherical orbit around the sun, it can just seems like travel towards the sun. What that happens? Create comic lighting, the comic tales. So that's whenever you see create comic tales, not the regular spherical object, I can tell this is an irregular object. So that's why it can generate light waves. And especially towards the sun, solar has a strong magnetic field, right? If you cross outside and crash inside of a solar magnetic field, you generate huge tails, light tails. Comic. I do not believe that periodic motion have anything to do with aliens. Yeah, could be natural phenomena.
Could be a natural phenomenon. So this is very interesting, though. It's really captivated us. Did you know that most methylene blue being sold online is the same grade that's used in fish tanks? Watch out for that low quality bottles that are untested for heavy metals, and they're made overseas, by the way. Well, you can trust the wellness company's Recharge, which is a doctor-formulated supplement combining powdered methylene blue with NAD+ and PQQ. This methylene blue is USP grade, ensuring top-tier purity for maximum safety and effectiveness. This is not some sketchy stuff that you're going to find on Amazon. Recharge is formulated with research-backed ingredients to optimize brain function and cellular repair while supporting clean and lasting energy. So tap into the cognitive and metabolic support that helps you stay energized, focused, and resilient all day long. Choose a trusted formula made for your body, not for fish tanks. So feel the difference with enhanced mental clarity, sustained energy, sharper focus, protection against cognitive decline, and know it won't turn your tongue blue. So head over to twc.health/redacted and use the code redacted to get 10% off plus free shipping. Again, that's twc.health/redacted. Use the code redacted to get 10% off. Is there anything else about 3i Atlas that you think challenges sort of standard assumptions about how objects form around stars?
There's many ways to say that one, but I do not have a specific theory to say. I just say, hey, this object may be similar to comics. The comic formation, can create a similar phenomena. So I do not have a particular theory. Probably you know more than I do. So.
Well, no, it's been fascinating because, at first I was like, oh, this is simply a comet. And then as I've been hearing from individuals, again, who have been on these triangular shaped craft, who have been on the moon base, I know this, might be shocking to a lot of people, but have, told me that, yeah, it's been here. It was here hundreds of thousands of years ago, and there's a lot more to the story. So just curious what that is for you. When you look at what's going on right now, from an astronomy perspective, what are the most exciting discoveries that you've seen maybe in the past few months from NASA, from astronomy, from astronomers around the world who are looking deep into space? What stands out to you? Is it some sort of a black hole mystery? Are there other things that really are piquing your interest right now?
I do have an interest to the UFO sightings or the images, the pictures, images taken by military. I do have a huge interest. And especially mentioned about, the traveling speed, right? That kind of traveling instantaneously, almost acceleration, is beyond any human-made project, made power system. So, which make me believe if these objects belongs to aliens object, of course, so they may have robots on top. But I do believe they have to know one thing is anti-gravity propulsion. So I do believe, and in my theory from my research, I do believe anti-gravity propulsion is real, and it could be, we could be harnessing it.
Yeah. Yes. So you believe without a doubt that anti-gravity propulsion technology is real, and which would seem to account for how these craft are able to not break up, right? And
exactly. The reason you break up, once the external force acting not uniform to every single point, when you to the surface, to one particular, so that's why you create the tension in the stress concentration in particular area. So then what happens? You break, right? You bend something. But anti-gravity is a gravity force. Anti-gravity force is acting every single point. Just like you free fall. You do not see any tension in your body. Every single fall in the same acceleration, same velocity. So that's how they can have, what is that? 600 Gs. We are talking about a human astronaut survivor. No more basically requirement. You cannot be any more than 9 Gs. This can have a 9 Gs. Normally is low.
Because your body would rip apart, right? I mean, your body would shred apart if anything more than that.
That's exactly. Because human travel is pushed by force on one side. So that means if in the bar, you sit on the chair, if you do your head, your neck may not have enough force to support you there, right? This is not the same case as anti-gravity force. The gravity force acting on every single point, so they all travel at the same velocity, same acceleration. So you do not see them break apart. So that's making me think about it. I'm a firm believer anti-gravity technology is right at the door.
You think it's right at the door? Did you say that?
Yes.
Yes.
There's many evidence include called gravifier. I don't know if lots of people do anti-gravity research. They saw a Russian young boy made this gravifier. So basically, it's a UFO type shape of a device. I have one. We purchased one from the same boss, same people, same guy. That's yeah. So basically, this size UFO shape, weighing couple pounds, and you power them, it can lift in space. And of course, we use electrical current to power them. Yeah.
So you purchased one at NASA? You have one of these?
No. Sorry. Actually, no. This is my side project. With
okay. So you have one. You have an anti-gravity machine at your house?
We purchased now this moment being borrowed by another
okay.
But I paid for in my house over a year and try to make it work. Yes.
Wow.
The principle is real. How technically try to make a resonance. Everything started a resonance from high voltage energy, ultrasound. So that take some time.
I was going to ask you about the energy source of this. I've heard from insiders that tell me that the energy used to power some of these alien craft, the craft that I believe we have probably at Area 51 or other proving grounds that we've been reverse engineering, that the energy sources would be enough to power a city. What sort of energy or power would it take? I mean, conventionally, like what do we have now that we know of that we could be using, or what would we need in order to power these craft, do you think?
Very good questions. I want to give you a simple answer. All energy is only from one source. Power the universe, okay?
The atmosphere, etheric energy.
Power the universe, include you said, hey, power the energy source, power the light vehicles, alien vehicles, only one source. Magnetism.
Magnetism, okay.
Only source.
And with this magnetism, is magnetism related to the etheric energy, like what Tesla had tapped into all around us?
Everything Tesla discovered is within magnetism, magnetic energy. Electricity is only effect. If I have LED lights here, and I'm rotating, I'm fast spinning magnets, what happens? LED light will lit up. Yeah. All the electricities are manifestation of magnetism. So I hope now you feel like it's simpler. Yes. Gravity, we just mentioned about it. Say, hey, if we have an alien alive, so this is a vehicles coming, what power them? Magnetism exists everywhere throughout the universe. But the people would, how do you know that? Because gravity works, right? Because we see, hey, the object works do have a bunch of them rotate with them, right? Gravity itself is a magnetic phenomenon. So just to let you know, in the future, if anybody asks you what the force make energy, right? All the made start with magnetism.
Magnetism. So it all comes back to magnetism. How do we harness that, though?
Yes.
Nothing else. So how do we harness that? I mean, I guess that's the great question, right? I mean, and it seems like some powerful forces in the United States government or defense contractors have figured out a way to harness this reverse engineering using this magnetism. But how exactly does it work? How exactly are we harnessing this? Maybe at scale. Like, it's one thing to have like a little thing in your house that you're playing with, or magnets on a desk that are clicking back and forth, but powering huge football field size craft.
That's very good. One thing, the biggest right now, the biggest renewable energy is solar panel, use solar energy. So this is so that's why we just put a panel. So what the panel does, you try to make sure the panel's surface, the particles on the panel's surface are super fine. So that means that they can, very, very small particle can interact with the light directly. And when they interact with the light, what happens is the particles are magnetic particles. So they oscillating, they create the electricity. So one way harness is through this called a solar solar panel, right? You have no doubt that, right?
Right,
So we can power that one. Another one we're talking about. Hey, we use coal, we use what's it, oil,
fossil fuels, gasoline,
fossil fuels, or even nuclear fuels. You know what the nuclear fuel is? It's a stored energy, stored in the matter, right? But we can ask further. So what kind of energy? We thought, oh, chemical energy. These are only very vague concept. I will tell you, everything is stored as magnetic energy. So where comes this energy? Everything, all the particles combining force are magnetic force. Gravity too weak cannot bind it. You have two sand. Gravity cannot make two sand become one particle, right? Just too weak. To find sand on the shore, so gravity too weak. The only force can combine them is sometimes people call it electromagnetic force. Forget about the electro. Electro is just a magnetic effect. When magnets in motion create the electric field. If a magnet is stationary, you still have a force. So that's a magnetic force, right? So basically, all the energy stored in chemical fuels, so all the, what is the gasoline or something, or chemical bond, or nuclear force, is all based on magnetic binding force. But these binding forces were not to turn to energy. You cannot say, hey, I have a piece of material, we call this energy. No. You have to change the condition. You have an external changing the condition. So turn what? So when the magnetic force can binding them in attraction, if you can alter direction of the same particle, partial particle, or you break them, it instantly turned to magnetic repulsion instead of attraction. So this magnetic repulsion is called stored energy. So all the energy we are harvesting, chemical, nuclear, thermal, electrical, is all from one single source, magnetic.
When you see things like Flight MH370 and the disappearance of Flight MH370,
that's my friend's what is Ashton Forbes.
Yes.
Yeah, so I was on his show and he introduced me to many different places. Okay, I saw he on your shows a couple times. Yeah.
And so I wanted to ask you about this plasmoids and the three orbs, the plasmoids that I know separately that from sources that I've spoken to that we have this technology and we can control it. So how exactly are we able to manipulate plasma in that way to create this massive, maybe gravitational force that makes an airplane disappear, which is clearly what happened it seems like from all evidence that I've seen, but maybe you know something different. What do you think?
Okay, so you do believe what Ashton Forbes theory, right?
Well, I'm open to anything. I'm open to anything.
Yes,
if you show me this plane sitting there that had been teleported and it's still intact and it's sitting there on a tarmac somewhere, I'm open to anything. I come from the Thomas Sowell world of show me the evidence. So show me the evidence. How are we able to control plasma and maybe our plasmoids, do you think? And what would be maybe the physics, the mechanics of controlling that, manipulating that in order to create some sort of an electromagnetic field in that way?
Yes, this is so-called high directional weapon, right? So which is no difference than laser light. We can concentrate the laser point, right? Shining. So the reason laser light is different than is high concentrated electromagnetic magnetic oscillation vibration. So high power means number one, they combined all the one because they directed. So that's why laser point can shooting almost infinite distance instead of regular flashlights being deflected, in the atmosphere. So we are talking about the directional vision, the weapon uses exactly the same principle. The only difference is they may all, the light, visible light has a very narrow spectrum, like from 400 nanometer wavelengths to 700 nanometer, very small spectrum. But if you use the same principle, we use electromagnetic wave, we use the wave, but outside of the visible spectrum, then you will see the same effect. We can, because high energy, we can burn a hole to any object in space, right? And
right,
of course,
we can fire a laser into space and burn a hole through something.
Yeah, that's right now. We may it's only limitation. Yes, we can, but only limitation is the power, and so that means the distance. Have you seen use laser to cut tree branches? Have you seen that one?
Yes.
Oh, you see that one. And I have a friend. He said he has one, or he used that one. That's true. I saw that. This is amazing.
I love that you work at NASA and you've got like an anti-gravity thing at home. Your friends have lasers that can cut branches. Yeah. I want to hang out with you and your friends.
Anytime, if you come back to Florida again, so I can take you to places. You talk about the orbs, so it's nothing much different than this is called a laser beam. If you believe a laser beam is true, and the only difference is this is called a directional weapon, operate in the light spectrum outside of a visible spectrum, like infrared or ultraviolet.
Interesting. What do you think happened to flight MH370?
I told Accident Forums, I said I was in the camp. Believe those images are Apple images. But at one point, that's the same one night before we go to Tim Pool's show together, me and Accident Forum, and he posted online a different video, which gave me looks like that's real. So I said, okay. I saw that video. I convinced because that video is instead of opposite color,
right,
like a video opposite color. It's like in real flight, color and the pattern and the show. But include the last minute exploded, right? Yeah, that one. So I said, okay, I can now. I tendency see, hey, I have to be open-minded. It could be military operation.
With the technology and the scientists that were on board that craft, and you look more deeply as to who was on board, what was on board, why would they intentionally try to? Why would they need to have access to this exactly?
I do believe now. So, yes.
I do as well. I don't think there's no evidence at all that it crashed. So show me the evidence, and I think the evidence is pretty overwhelming. And plus, not only from Ashton's research on this and others' research, but I've spoken to insiders who've also told me that we control these plasmoid technologies. We have control of it. So I'm a believer. I will sit in that camp until I'm proven wrong. I want to talk more about UAPs, UFOs. I hate calling them UAPs just because I feel like that's like a modern way of trying to.
I know they try to avoid the.
It bothers
UFO,
me.
Right? There's no substance change. Yes, I agree with you.
At NASA, let me just ask you, you're at NASA. When you walk in the halls of NASA, do you, and I know you haven't asked everybody that works there, but would you say, like when you're in the lunchroom or you're hanging out having coffee with other NASA engineers and scientists, are they pretty much all on the level? Do pretty much every one of these NASA engineers and individuals who work at NASA think that we are one of many species in the universe, or are there NASA engineers who think, nope, that's it, we're alone?
Around my colleague, I may not be say all the NASA, among my colleague, they think about it the same way as me.
That we are not alone.
As I do, because if a human being can, grow on the earth, right? Biological, living things can be the universe should have. I do not believe anybody really doubt that. They may doubt any evidence people present. Hey, we question the evidence because we believe this may not be true evidence, but we do not, bias about the conclusion.
When you look at some of the criticisms of NASA over the years, there's criticisms that we've talked about here on the show, which is that they'll have a live feed from the International Space Station. There'll be a live video feed, and then suddenly it turns off as there's a craft approaching. That suddenly something comes into and suddenly the live feed gets shut off. There's lots of criticisms, of course, of NASA over the years. How do you feel about that?
It's a fair game. NASA, number one, our main NASA, particularly for human space program.
Right.
I would say, right. That's our main goal. And there's a certain information because of national security, right? Military application. So in certain sense, they do have a way. Just like FBI, right, or protect something. But this is in NASA. This is the very, very minimum. Yeah.
Yeah, and sort of shutting down the video feeds when maybe there's something of national security. There's one of these craft that is human made that we have some advanced technology that, oops, we're not allowed to show that. So we've got to turn off the cameras. To be
open, say. To be clarified, I personally work in NASA has not seen any purposeful, but during my tenure here, purposeful deceive the public. No.
Okay.
NASA is the best, most open organization I ever worked with in my life.
You've studied physics at the highest levels. When you look at UFO reports, like what descriptions immediately violate known physics? Is it what we talked about, the unbelievable speed and acceleration of these craft, or are there other things that stand out to you from a physics perspective?
Very good question. Just one. To give you my personal take, all the descriptions not violate the physics law. I'm talking about the conventional physics law. Conventional physics may differ than mine, but based on my own discovery or something, I do not see they are violated, and probably pointed me to more conform to the real physics law. So one thing is you mentioned about high acceleration, say over 600 Gs instead of our 6 Gs, right? For the acceleration. And so number one, you said, hey, how can we achieve this kind of acceleration? For me, all the energy come from magnetism, right? And the gravity is a manifestation magnetism, so from magnetic repulsion. So that means anti-gravity means magnetic repulsion. So only that would they act force on every single point particles and reverse them. So you do not see any break parts, right? So like F-16 or something, if they G too high, right? So they make, so that's one. Another very important phenomenon. They almost always mentioned about a UFO spherical shape, a narrow disk, right? Spherical. One thing about the physical laws, if anything spinning, it has stabilized. Do I have an example example here. Oh, yeah, there.
So do you have a UFO in your office? I wouldn't.
No, not the UFO. Okay, I use a disk to demonstrate why things need spinning. Did you see they describe a lot of UFOs? You know the little disk chip and the spinning. Spinning has its property is called conservation of angular momentum. So let me see if I can demonstrate this one to you. Oh my goodness. Let me push this one. So you know why things has to spin. And so this is not violate the law. Actually, this is exactly. See, if I do this one, they fall, right?
Right.
So what happens if I'm sorry.
Whoa. What? That's crazy.
This is, yeah,
Wow.
okay. So what I try to say, so there's basically this gyroscope. So NASA uses a gyroscope to control direction. Whenever you're spinning something, it stabilizes its orientation. You know, one thing about anti-gravity is, if you anti-gravity in this one, you move away. But if you flip this thing, what happens? Because instant gravity pull crashes, right?
Right.
To avoid this happening, you need what? You need to make it a spin. When you spin in the stables, it keep the stable structure.
So even like we would see like a typical saucer shape.
Yes,
but
sorry.
inside of there is some sort of an anti-gravity spinning, potentially spinning technology inside that keeps it stabilized.
Yes, you are mentioning about spinning could be physical spin, right? The whole say outer ring spinning create what's called a conservation of angular momentum. So physical, and it could happen is called electromagnetic field spinning. It also stabilizes the structure. So that's why anti-gravity you looks like so powerful. But if you're not spinning, what happens is you suddenly turn over. Will be instantaneously disaster. So I believe spinning is one of the mechanisms control this stability. And another thing, I try to give you evidence, right? They always mention about the lights. You know, they always mention the lights. You know, some kind of lights come out of area. So which make me think about it. You know, so the way we can make anti-gravity work, we have to spinning electromagnetic field. When you have a spinning magnetic field, you keep the structure stable and also create anti-gravity effect. And when you spinning, so why does those have to do with the light? When you're spinning a magnetic field, what happens? Create a light.
So that's why wow. I have so many questions about this. We talk about, you obviously have deep knowledge as a crew spacecraft subsystem manager. People say, why the heck have we not gotten back to the moon? Why is it so difficult for us to get humans back to the moon? We could do it in the 1960s when the spacecraft had less power than this iPhone in my pocket. So now here we are in 2025, heading into 2026. Why is it so difficult to get us back to the moon?
Oh, that's great questions. If you compare the efforts during the Apollo era, right? Compare the number of the investment in the world, right? At that time, like 3% of GDP. Right now is 0.1%. So, you know, compare the effort is different. Another thing is because of a different structure, different, and a different material, something, you have to go through so many try and error. This, of course, we learn many things, right? Learn many things. And I believe the technology, we do have it. So we have lots of data. We use it routinely for our International Space Station transfer. We do use the same type of technology as Apollo Air. However, go to Apollo Air, it's not a simple feat. Just to let you know, the technology and the experienced people retired, the knowledge maybe have a cliff. It's no longer continuous. So there are a lot of things that still need to rework, I would say.
I mean, there are a lot of people that believe, oh, we're hiding something. We don't want to go back to the moon because of the moon base, the multiple moon bases that are there, and you have one section of the military and NASA that is not really read in on these programs, that is not involved in the jump rooms and Stargate projects and secret space programs that are traveling back and forth on a regular basis to the moon base. And now you're going to shove in this sort of more civilian-facing, televised moon mission, which could jeopardize the things that we're already doing on the moon. What do you say to those people?
Well, I believe number one, time will tell them. Even though for me, I firmly believe we did landing human in the moon, landing in the moon. I have no doubt. But however, even my sister, even my brother-in-law, he even mentioned about it. Moon landing is fake. Like something I don't want to cite more people, right? But I do believe, we did landing people in the moon. We're still benefiting from many data in our engineering design, and so that's why we have so reliable, International Space Station traveling through SpaceX or through Boeing's, right, Starliners. The reason we do have technology, except all their technology, of course, they hired lots of ex-NASA people, right? And the NASA partner with them, basically provide all the free data, free technology for them to be successful.
I know over your shoulder there, we've got the 3 keys to understand unlocking the mystery of the universe. Maybe you could walk us through why these are the 3 keys. These are obviously part of your theories specifically, but I want to hear about this. Maybe you can explain.
Thank you. One of my mission is to try to convince your audience about the universe is much, much simpler than we ever been taught. Simpler. Yeah, it's not difficult. So otherwise, I have the confidence. So in order to convince your audience, I need to convince you. So let me explain why these 3 keys can unlocking all the mysteries in the universe. Okay. So if I can convince you, and I welcome you to make a comment, to make questions during this one. So the first one, if you look at it here, I said called a mono-charged particle. So I made an example, say electron, positron, proton, and quarks. So they are all charged particle. Is that have a problem? No problem, right? They are all charged particles.
Electron, positron, protons, and quarks are all positively charged particles.
Yeah, they are positive, and only electrons are negative charge, right? Quark may have some. Remember what I said. So I lumped all them together as called a mono charge. That means a particle carry single charge.
Right.
I call it mono charge. And you look at this conclusion is these particles does not exist at all. And they cannot exist. And I have evidence. I need to convince you today. So you not only know why though it do not exist, but I want to convince you why it does not exist. You know what implication?
What you're saying then is these don't actually exist. The idea of an electron being just a negatively charged particle.
Yes. They cannot exist in this universe.
You think it doesn't exist.
And I want to convince you. Once you convince this one, you will understand. Universe is so simple.
So this is crazy because this is what we learn in elementary school or
From elementary school, exactly.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
the question that I wanted
Yeah.
to know. When did you last time take a physics class? Is it junior high, middle school, junior high,
something
or
like that.
college?
Yeah.
Probably,
I think
right?
yeah, probably high school I think high school or junior high, something like that.
Yeah. That's a good start. So since then, we were started. So first page, we said atoms composed of electron and the nucleus. Exactly wrong. Okay. So now let me explain. You already understand. It's crazy to say electron. We started from the first page of the book. Atoms, electron. They're wrong. So that means how much work with. I need want to convince. So if electrons are wrong, I would tell you it does not exist. So neither positron and proton can exist. What that means? That means the atom model we call the orbital atomic model. That means the electron orbiting the nucleus.
Yeah, the kids make in elementary school with like foam balls and they stick toothpicks into it and they build an atom with an electron and a proton and here's your atom. That's all garbage.
It's complete. My goodness, you said it's complete garbage. Does not exist. With all the technology imaging we have, our electron looks like all atoms looks like a sesame ball. Okay, spherical ball. Huh. Yeah, all atoms. So does not like so now you know if electron model is wrong. So this is called the orbital atom model will be wrong. Just like you said, even better than that. It's garbage. And then go further. Quantum mechanics model will be completely wrong because the quantum mechanics model built it on top of this called orbital atom model. So if orbital model is wrong, quantum mechanics is wrong. So the entire physics, modern physics has been rewritten. Okay, so that's the first point. Right now, I want you to understand the significance. You already understand. The second one, photon. Photon, that's we define it as a particle of light. Photon. Photon is completely does not exist. Photon does not exist. What that means, if a photon does not exist, so what kind of replace photons? Photons is a particle of light. So light basically is a wave motion. It's electromagnetic wave. So we need, how can you have a wave? You need to have a medium. So it's old days called the ether, but right now I call them called the electromagnetic, called the magnetic medium.
It's a magnetic medium.
Yeah, just made by magnetic particles. Just like a water made by water molecules. Every water molecules is a magnetic particles. Basically, so if light, if a photon particle of light does not exist, what do we pre-assume? Assuming space has a medium. So that would explain how gravity can act in over distance instead of an empty space. It actions through the medium, and explain light can traveling through space. It's not as a particle, and then can solve all the mysteries. Lots of mysteries experiment. We can solve that. Okay, so the first 2 points point to what's wrong with the current physics. So why it's so difficult? People started all years. They do not understand. So now, what is it really exist? Only one particle. Magnetic particle. I define it called the universal fundamental particle is just magnetic dipole, just a little magnet. This is the only particle can exist in this universe. I tell you conclusion and I will explain why. If I can convince you this one, so you know. If I can convince you electron, positron, proton cannot exist, you would automatically think about it. Of course, the orbital model does not exist. Quantum mechanics, you know what? Quantum mechanics try to describe electron position, right? Electron has to jump from orbiter to orbiter. If there's nothing jumps, if electron does not exist, nothing jump from where to where. There's no moving parts in atom. Of course, you know quantum mechanics is garbage. the same language as you.
Wow, you're blowing my mind. So the old atom model that we grew up doesn't exist. The only so atoms don't exist then, and the only particles that exist are just little magnet particles.
Fundamental magnet particle, so-called atom, just like a little magnet particle, as a composite particle to atom. But
with a north and a south,
yes, it's all
polarity.
Bipolar. Yeah. When you put lots of magnets together, overall, closer enough, you will see local effect. But globally, you will see all the magnet conform to north and south form. Do we still have time? Let me convince you why this is not, why these are wrong. Once you understand this one and why only particle can exist, I believe my mission would be accomplished. If you let me right now.
Yes, please.
I'm convinced I'm gonna do this one. So let me see if I can. Okay. First of all, how did I come up with this conclusion, right? So your audience, hey, you made such a huge claim. What did you discover? So let me tell you one secret. I discovered the so-called electrical charge. No current electrical engineering people, professor or PhD, no one understands what's the origin of a charge. So this is a mystery I want to share with your audience. The so-called electrical charge is completely mistaken for magnetic dipole. The so-called positive charge are magnetic north pole, and the negative charge are magnetic south pole. So that means the universe, all the so-called charge is just magnetic polarity. Does that make sense to you?
Yes. And it also opens up, go ahead. I don't want to interrupt. I'm just thinking about this in terms of black holes and space-time.
Yes. I will explain that one. So now, if you understand that, so now we can take the electrical part off. The so-called charge, not the electric charge, is a magnetic dipole, right? Okay. So yeah, I underline magnetic pole. Okay, so the trigger event. So the reason I ask you, when did you last time take a physics class? This is a trigger event from my middle school year. When I first learned electricity, flow of electron, right? Flow of charge. Is this something concept people have in their mind?
Yeah.
Completely wrong. So I noticed this is wrong since I'm middle school, because I can never conceive the idea. Electron solid particles traveling in a solid wire at a speed nearly of a fraction of speed of light. I can never conceive that idea, never accept. So I know something, maybe not right. The second triggering event is this orbital atomic model, we just mentioned about, right? So electron orbiting nucleus. If electron does not exist, of course, nucleus is not the same way as we thought. And this one, when I was in middle school, I convinced myself this must be wrong. So I have been waiting for somebody correct this error. I believe someday people will correct this error, in my lifetime. You know what happens? So I studied physics PhD. After I started working for NASA, graduated and started working NASA, still nobody tell me these are wrong. So I said, okay, I have to work myself. And then I found out electron does not exist. There's no moving parts whatsoever inside of an atom. So of course this model represents called a perpetual motion machine. Can you imagine every single smallest part of an atom are inside inside called constant in motion. That's a perpetual motion. What power them? What make them constant in motion? Why does not dissipate energy, right? So this is perpetual. We know perpetual machine does not exist whatsoever. So these two things trigger me, say physics must be wrong. But I did not solve them, so I study. In my PhD or college, I just try to finish the college work with get a perfect GPA. That's my goal. Right? It's never try to understand fully. You have no time to understand fully in college. So now, after graduate, I understand. So these are, and I was right. Electricity is never flow of particles, and atoms have no moving parts. And how do I convince you guys? Oh, this is because of time limit. So I would say, hey, the problem started from Coulomb's law. It's like 241 years ago.
Right.
Coulomb is right. Say, hey, like charge repel, opposite charge attract, no problem. But it implied that there's two particles. One is a negative charge particle. One represents a positive charge particle. So that's basically is a monocharge particle. And this particle, but until over 100 years later, so in 1897, that's a British scientist called J.J. Thomson discovered electron, and win Nobel Prize for that one. And that's the time physics completely derailed from a real physics course.
So the quote unquote discovery of the electron in 1897 was when physics fell apart and became derailed.
Fell apart from here because J.J. Thomson, based on this experiment, if I can show you the experiment called cathode ray.
Here we can see the electrons being deflected by the magnet. The cathode ray moves upward. If we reverse the magnet, we would predict that the beam would be deflected in the opposite direction. And we observe that the beam is deflected downward.
So he's using magnets.
See, this is a magnetic effect. He interpreted it as a negative charged particle electron. You know what happens? If you have a negative charge particle, somebody discover, hey, I have a positive charge particle to balance them, right?
Right.
Everything has to balance. And then somebody says, well, why find a neutral particle? And that's cascaded. So, and all the later on experiment, they all try to describe based on the negative charge particle. All the interpretation. So this is the starting point.
I have so many questions. I mean, given your theory here about the dipole, these are just a magnetic particle.
Yes, just dipole. Yeah.
When we hear about, when we launch a nuclear bomb, right, we're splitting the atom, and that's why it's releasing this massive amount of power,
energy.
So were they wrong about that? Were they splitting an atom that wasn't what they thought they were splitting? How did that unfold?
Oh, it's not wrong. Physically, it's not wrong. What they do is you basically ask where comes the nuclear energy, right? So where comes, they bonded like a magnetic particle bonded by magnetic force, right? If you split, there's one thing is if you have a magnet, bar magnets, you break it. You know what happens? Instantly create a repulsion force.
Yes.
Because original like pole suddenly instantly create a repulsion force. That's the energy. So that means whenever you split anything, instantly break anything, you will see they take part.
So that explains maybe when we see these nuclear bombs going off, we see this incredible wave of energy.
Is it because magnetic repulsion?
Wow.
When you break magnets instantly, is that a simple? That's what it's called chemical energy.
You're blowing my mind. I didn't expect to have this. I didn't have everything I've learned in school was a joke then. When everything I learned in science class was a joke.
Oh my goodness. You are not wrong. Actually, you are much applied than some other people I would talk to during NASA Expo, explanation. They call that all we learned is the lie.
Yeah, but I mean, so you are in NASA. Are there people across NASA who are accepting this as a reality, a dipole magnetic particle, or are they still
No.
adhering to the electron model from 1897?
That's very good. Judge whether correct is see how your people right around you, all the people around me are being turned from classical physics turn into my diehard believer. So I do for yeah. So
How would that affect space travel? How would that affect NASA's mission, changing this entire paradigm?
Yeah, it helps NASA space flight mission because right now we're burning chemical fuels, right? If you remember, even SpaceX right now we just say mentioned about whatever we have. Say we launch astronaut from Earth to the International Space Station. 97 to 98% all the weight are just for carry the fuel. So
Right.
wasted. Only the little capsule carry what is 4 astronauts. We designed 7, but it's now reduced to 4. A normal mission will only have 3, traveling, right?
Right.
So just a little small capsules, very small. Yeah, just like a middle van size. So how much money wasted.
On fuel.
So
yeah.
the solution is if we use anti-gravity technology. Basically, we just use real gun, just like we have the real gun. This is called electromagnetic gun. Shooting something. Basically, we use electromagnetic propulsion. We do not consuming any chemical propellant, and we can launch them and faster and cheaper.
Does Elon Musk know about this? Is he on board with your theory of this?
No, actually, I only saw Elon a couple times. From audience. I never. But there's one time, like a couple months ago, Elon Musk put a Twitter post, say, "Hey, if anybody understands the nature of the universe, right?" He said, "Hey, just tell me, no matter how crazy that is, and tell me." And I did tweet it, included this chart. I said, if you understand that these 3 key points to unlocking the mystery, you will understand the nature of the universe. Never get a response, but I did get thousands of people reading his email response, and so that was. So basically, we do not have a direct line of conversation, unless someday you can make that happen.
I would love to. Elon, if you're watching, pay attention to this. Maybe we can connect you guys. And he likes earth-shattering paradigms or paradigms that are earth-shattering. So maybe this could completely upend SpaceX and change things, not having to spend billions of dollars on fuel and everything.
Can you imagine?
I've always thought, I mean, given all the UFO technology that we have, these reverse engineering of craft that we have, we're using this electromagnetic technology already. Is this the key?
Not?
Is this the key here to bridge us from your research to that?
Exactly, which I firmly believe. They're gonna, if we launch a capsule, we just need that little capsule in just like shooting a bullet, right? Yeah.
Wow.
Of course, you consider people's safety, right?
Right.
So you may stage wise something, but we can reduce this by 98% weight and effort, and use only thing you just use electricity. That's it. Now you do not consuming any other substance.
Well, some days you wake up and you think, am I gonna have my entire world turned upside down on a particular day? And Doc, you just did that. You just completely upended
My goodness. you already grasped the significance. Mm-hmm. This is amazing. I have attended so many shows. Okay, taken me so many time to emphasize to make them understand. But you know what? I finally made a group of 6 people on the we show on that show, made all of them understand. So, Clayton, I wanted to use my last minute effort to explain to you why other particles called monocharge cannot exist. And if you understand this one, I believe, and your audience, your audience may understand, then you understand that the universe is much simpler. Is that okay?
Yeah,
Let me
please.
start with that one. Okay.
Please.
I hope from now, I just try to use a few minutes to explain this one to you, why called monocharged particles means a negative charge or purely positive charge particle cannot exist. If I convince this one, the whole paradigm, whole universe paradigm will shift. So I'm going to use this demonstration, assuming this is an electron. Okay, so and assuming everything we taught from the past are correct, that means the electron is a negative charged particle. So can you imagine what happens if I hypothetically split them into halves? Clayton, give a guess. What do I get? If an electron
is split in half. If an electron with a negative charge is split in half.
If I split two fragments,
then I would get a positive charge?
Only three options. If you split an electron negative charge get two positive, you violated a charge conservation. How could a charge being from negative suddenly to positive, right? This is a fundamental physics law.
Right.
Charge conservation. You cannot switch charge just by your smaller segments.
So then you would have two negative charges after you split it.
What? That's exactly what I expected. So now the most logical is what you just said. Two negative fragment, right?
Right. Two negative fragments.
Problems. Can you make a two negative charged fragment? Make it to original electron.
Right. What would be holding it together if they're both negative? It would make
they repel. That's what the Coulomb's law says, right?
Right. It would be repelling.
They cannot together.
They cannot.
There's no way you can make them together. So that means what that means? That means electron, the negative charged particle, cannot exist in the first place. Does that make sense to you? So
yes, that makes total sense. And now that when you say
my goodness, you are so intelligent. Not just good looking.
I don't know that I'm intelligent. I'm just open to it. Like I can see. I've seen so many BS stories fall apart over the years that now it just makes so much sense. Two negatives. How are they going to join together? They would be repelling. It wouldn't make any sense. How would they be joined together in the first place?
My mission is almost accomplished.
And the same with a positive particle, right?
See, this is exactly what I try to say. Okay, let's assume the smallest particle, either negative or positive or neutral. Can they exist? Positive violate the Coulomb's law. If a positive charged particle, you split it, you cannot make back. You violated the called Coulomb's law, lack of charge repel, right? So positive particle cannot. What about negative particle? We just mentioned negative particle cannot. How about the neutral particle? Is that a possibility? We have a neutral particle does not have a charge.
No, I can see here you say no binding force. That makes sense. If it's neutral, what would be the energy that would even keep it together in the first place?
Oh my goodness! Oh, you see? Oh, you can see the.
I saw that. Yeah. I saw that there. Makes sense.
My partner told me, David Gnarski, right? Told me, hey, your words are too small to see on TV.
we have a big monitor here in our studio. Plus, I've read. So, I mean, that makes the most sense. You can't have a negative particle split apart that is attracted to each other. Same with a positive, and with a neutral,
they cannot combine. Okay.
Wow.
So now the question is, what water particle can only exist?
A positive and negative, or dipolar, as you were pointing out, right?
Exactly. Every single particle has carry both poles, and we know this particle exists because we know magnets exist.
Right.
Does that make sense to you?
Right. Yeah, because
And
if you flip around a magnet, the polarity repels, and if you flip it around the other way,
oh my goodness. No wonder people love you doing Fox and Friends. Okay, I know you were the most rational one on the intelligent.
back on Fox and Friends back in the day. Yeah,
Because
Well,
that's how we all met you. Still,
Yeah.
I don't even remember when did you leave. You just tell me 17. But for me, seems like I could stay there forever. Okay, so now. You know, the most ridiculous things to me is there's only logical particle magnets we see every day, right? And so does not include in the quantum mechanics model. Quantum mechanics have hundreds, started with like 26 basic elements, but if you put antiparticles, right, and also if you consider supersymmetry, you double the one. They include every single particle except include the real existing particle.
right. They've included quarks. They've included neutrons, positrons, electrons, and they're throwing all of this in there, and it
Never mentioned about one particle, just a magnetic particle. So that's why quantum mechanics is fundamentally wrong. And the reason, now I wanted to show you the reason magnetic particle is so different than all the other particles we mentioned. If you split or subdivide the magnets, what did you get? You split a magnet, of course they repel, right?
right.
We get two smaller magnets. It is a self-similar geometry.
Wow.
This is the only particle. It's a self-similar and can assemble or can subdivide without changing its physical property. That's the only particle.
And it makes sense and it makes sense, a nuclear weapon with the explosion of energy.
Exactly.
Wow.
Clayton, I
blew
did
my
not
mind.
expect that I can accomplish this in 1 hour. Okay.
Well, again, it helps to be open to possibilities, and when I think about it, when I deeply think about it, I think maybe that's why I struggled with physics because it never made sense to me. As a student, you just go along with it because you just go along with them telling you electrons. This is what an atom looks like. One of my children is learning about this right now.
Oh.
So I'm going to have to show her this interview and blow her mind. She'll be the stickler. She'll be the stickler in the classroom when she says, "My dad says this doesn't exist."
Right?
Yes.
You have to let them discipline this. Okay.
Yes.
Don't voice disagreement in public.
Exactly.
Unless you don't want to graduate.
Exactly. Well, Doc, this is amazing. I mean, you mentioned your NASA colleagues are pretty open to this, and they're coming around on this. What about I'll let you go here in a few minutes here, but what about the physics community in general? How do they respond? How do they respond to this?
Oh, I have interviewed Michio Kaku, Brian Greene, okay, of course, and what is it? Sabina Hassenfelder, they are supposed to be. Sabina is very open-minded, right? And also what is the Michio Kaku and Brian Greene? So they developed their own string theory. They call the founder of string theory. Right?
String theory, right?
The reason they found string theory because they all doubted the current theory is wrong, right? Otherwise,
that's a great point, because when I read Brian Greene's books back in the day, and I was always stunned. So he was creating or coming up with this idea of string theory, this vibration, because all of that other stuff really didn't make sense to him.
Right. You see, you got the key point. It does not mean the vibration string make any sense, but at least everything else does not make sense to them, to Michio Kaku and to Brian Greene. Oh my goodness, you can see the other side of things. So wow, Impressive.
I was always fascinated because Brian Greene always had an incredible way of trying to explain things, very
eloquent. Yes.
very eloquent,
Articulate.
and his books. I've read, I
Very
think
popular.
both of his books back in the 1990s, I think, when they came out. So I was always fascinated by this, and I know he was sort of like a rebel within the physics community because here he was coming out with this idea of vibration and string theory, and
Right.
but now it all makes sense. It all makes sense that what he was saying everything we've been taught really doesn't make sense. So here's my idea of string theory, which can help us make. It was almost like here's string theory, which can help us make it make sense.
That's right. That's his intention. But to be honest with you, string theory even make less sense than the previous theory.
Right.
But does that mean? But the previous theory is totally founded on wrong foundation too. Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, you've blown my mind. I hope that our audience had their mind blown as well. We'd love to have you back on at some point, and maybe we can do a follow up. We can. I'm sure we'll have thousands of comments from people here on this video, and maybe we can do a Q&A next time, and maybe we can answer a ton of the questions maybe that our audience has about some of the questions they have about this theory. Doctor, it's been great having you here on the show. It's been eye-opening. Again, like I said, I didn't think when I'd wake up this morning that I would have my world turned upside down in a way, but I love doing that. That's why I do this. That's why I do this show. So thank you so much. Thank you for your great work. Thanks for your time, and thanks for educating all of us about this. This has been mind-blowing. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor.
It's my honor to be on your show. Again, thank you so much.
Thank you.